Today on Physically Spiritual, I'm joined by Dr. Kathleen Berchelmann, the co-founder of My Catholic Doctor. Welcome to Physically Spiritual. I've been amazed by how much growing physically healthier has changed my spiritual life. I am captivated with discovering the truth about my body and how it relates to my relationship with God. Physically Spiritual is my attempt to harmonize and share what I have discovered. I'm your host, Andrew Reinhart. Today I have the honor and the privilege to introduce you to Dr. Kathleen Berchelmann. She's a wife and a mother of 7. She's a board-certified pediatrician with a fellowship in medical ethics at Weston Jesuit School of Theology. She and her husband founded My Catholic Doctor, an online Catholic medical practice, in 2018. She speaks and consults nationally on vaccines derived from aborted fetal cell lines. She is a frequent guest and medical expert on Catholic media outlets and a recurring guest on the Catholic Medical Association's podcast, Dr. Doctor. Welcome to the show, Dr. Berchelmann.
Thank you so much, Andrew, for having me.
Yeah, I wanted to start out and just ask you about your life. You know, I think My Catholic Doctor started with one Catholic doctor, you. and working in the church is really a labor of love. A lot of people I know who start ministries and apostolates do it out of their own pocket. And I imagine My Catholic Doctor might be something like that. So before we know about My Catholic Doctor, I'd love to hear your story.
Well, My Catholic Doctor was really many, many years of discernment on my part and the part of my husband. He's our co-founder. So really, it was many years ago that I began asking myself this question: what is Catholic healthcare anyway? I did a rotation at a Catholic hospital when I was a medical student, and it was my OB-GYN rotation. I also rotated in adolescent medicine at the same Catholic hospital. And I believe that I was placed there by my medical school because they knew that I was Catholic and that I was the director of the small Bible study group or the coordinator of the small Bible study group for medical students. And so they felt that by placing me at the Catholic hospital for my OB-GYN rotation, that this would be an act of charity for me. It would fit in better there. But it didn't work out that way. In fact, they were, I walked in there to this beautiful Catholic hospital, which has incredible artwork and a gorgeous statue of Mary in the lobby. And there's an oil painting of the bishop in the lobby. And every room has a crucifix. And I went in there so young and naive. I thought, oh my gosh, this is the kind of doctor I want to be. And here I was, a third-year medical student. And it didn't work out that way. I very quickly realized that this was about the most hostile place for a Catholic to practice medicine because, they were not following the teachings of the Catholic Church, and they prescribed contraception, and the pills were just hidden under the director's desk, and they did sterilizations and didn't even chart them, really. And they would say that you can cut fallopian tubes when you're doing a C-section, we consent the patient verbally, but we don't put it in the chart. I'm not kidding. This is a long time ago. And I was so terrified. They knew that I was a faithful Catholic, a practicing Catholic, and that I had been to divinity school. I went to divinity school before I went to medical school. Okay. And they were as scared of me as I was scared of them. And it was just a very rough time, and word about me and the fact that I might, quote, rat on them, went around. And then the next thing that happened was I had to go to my adolescent medicine rotation at the same hospital, and it was a similar story. The director of adolescent medicine sat me down and told, in a waiting room with a crucifix on the wall, and said, don't let anyone leave this clinic without contraception. And this is what he said to me, and I quote, "I don't care if they say they're a Seventh-day Adventist and they're not going to have sex until they're 30. Don't let them leave this office without contraception." And I was so young and naive, Andrew. I was like, I want to teach you about natural family planning. And I know this fabulous nun that I can come bring in here, and she'll give talks about natural family planning. And I actually thought that because they worked at a Catholic hospital that they would be supportive of this. Well, it didn't serve me well. And in the end, I didn't get honors for any of. I was not downgraded, but I didn't get a very good grade in any of those rotations, despite the fact that I actually had the highest grade on the test and my whole class for the pediatrics exam. But they still didn't give me honors based on my quote clinical performance, right? And they knew that this pretty much put me out of the running to get a competitive residency position in pediatrics. And so, I was really being punished for what I had made them go through. And in the end, it all resulted in me really questioning, what am I doing trying to become a Catholic doctor? And what is the point of Catholic healthcare anyways? And what is Catholic healthcare? Is it just about contraception and euthanasia and abortion and mental health issues? Are those the only fields where you really need a Catholic doctor? I actually just went on and spent like the next 10 plus years really discerning that exact question and praying about what does it mean to be a Catholic doctor. I went on to I actually did, through God's grace, I actually got an extremely competitive residency program.
Nice.
I ended up, I had a Catholic, so the end of that story is I had a faithful Catholic advisor at medical school who understood what happened to me and got me what's called an interview rotation at an extremely competitive pediatric program. So you spend a 4th year rotation as an away student at that institution, and if they like you enough, they'll accept you into their residency program, regardless of what your prior transcript says. And that's what I did. And he set that all up for me when he realized what happened. So God is very good. When you carry your cross, God really takes care of his children. And I ended up getting the most competitive residency program out of my whole class, the most competitive pediatric residency position out of my whole class in medical school. So I did. I went to Washington University in St. Louis, associated with Barnes Jewish Hospital, and I left Catholic healthcare and spent 15 very happy years at Washington University in St. Louis. And as faculty and as an academic pediatrician there. I hold the record for the most maternity leave ever granted to a Washington University faculty member. And I'm very proud of this and very grateful to WashU for all of that support. I never would have been able to have this large family if it weren't for them. But during that whole time, I continued asking this question of what is Catholic healthcare, and what was God really calling me to be and to me to do? And there was this clear call to do something more intentional within Catholic healthcare. And then one day, and there was also this interest in telehealth that I should mention, that before telehealth ever was a thing, actually starting in 2004, I actually wrote this proposal about starting telehealth at at Washington University. And so before telehealth was a thing, I was interested in telehealth. And I went down a couple of what seemed like blind avenues, learning telehealth and learning various administrative roles, learning media. I was media spokesperson for St. Louis Children's Hospital and Washington University for 7 years, and learned how to do television interviews and all of that. And during all this time, the Lord was preparing me. He was giving me a clear skill set of what I needed to start my Catholic doctor. And so then one day in adoration, the call was really made clear. And as I said, I felt that I had the pieces of the puzzle, that I knew the path forward. I knew that I wanted to start a Catholic telehealth company. And I knew that we had the skills and what it needed, what it takes to really start that organization. So I came and I told my husband, okay, I know what it is. I know what we're meant to do now. And he said, okay, sure, let's do it. But it was easy for him to say that because we've been talking about it for 10 years, right? And little pieces here and there. And then I said, look, now I've got the whole picture. Now I know the path forward. But we went about this in a very reasonable manner. At that time, we were happily living in St. Louis. We had 6 children. I was very well employed, and we had paid off our home and our farm an hour outside of St. Louis, and we were able to homeschool our children, and we had wonderful friends and community, and life was very good, and there was no reason to make changes. But so we started My Catholic Doctor as a small group of 6 clinicians that knew each other through the National Catholic Medical Association. And our original plan when we incorporated in 2018 was that we were going to be a second opinion service via telehealth. And we were just 6 people that, no advertising, just word of mouth. We weren't accepting insurance. It was just going to be a little, like, if you want a second opinion from a Catholic doctor, you can do a telehealth consult. And after we incorporated in that manner, but before we opened clinically, the Lord made it clear that he had other plans. But it was a very painful process, actually. And I skipped some of the other painful parts of this story. But I want to make it clear that the Lord does not spare anyone their cross. And that's also true for people who really follow a clear calling from the Lord, that often the beginning process of starting a new ministry really includes tremendous suffering. And we were not spared in that suffering, both on a personal level, as well as on a professional level. But I'm gonna skip some of those details, but just rest assured that the suffering was great. Yeah. So we started this as a small group of people, but the Lord had a different plan. And we actually had intended to start a partnership with another organization that was going to provide us with an anchor patient population and some money to get started, and especially from serving that population. And in the end, that relationship did not work out, and it didn't. The end of it didn't end nicely, but what happened was during the most of 2018, we grew our organization from those original 6 people to 36 clinicians offering services in 50 states. So that's really where we became a large organization, and that was the good part that came out of that relationship. So when that other organization ended their relationship with us, we were left in this situation where we had 36 employees signed and contracted, and technology contracts, and a lot of costs, and no startup funding, and no startup patient population. And it was a significant financial hardship. My husband and I had put in almost all of the original investment dollars. Actually, I'll accept $10,000 of the original investment money came out of our personal finances. And with the loss of this partnership, we were in a personally very difficult financial situation. We sold our house and our farm, both of which we had paid off, and we moved to Connecticut to be closer to my family. We moved from Missouri to Connecticut. So that we could have the support of my parents while we started this ministry. Also, we lived with my parents for almost 2 years. And so in the end, it was all really a blessing. I was happy to live with my parents when I delivered my 7th child. And then the Lord really provided, and we did get our own home. So we are in our own home now, but we were able to take the proceeds from the sale of our home and our farm and use that to as really the rest of the startup funding for My Catholic Doctor, and also and then what was left we used to buy our existing home. So we did it. So when we ended our relationship with this other initial partner organization, we actually closed. We had been open 2 days clinically. We closed and then reopened as a 501c3 not-for-profit in January 2019. In 2019, we were open kind of like in a skeleton mode with a low patient volume, but then we knew we had to get a bunch of ducks in a row. We had to improve our technology. We had to improve our clinicians, we get a greater volume of clinicians offering more services in more states. And we knew we had to be able to accept insurance. And we'll get more into that, Andrew, because it was very important to us from the beginning that we make our services accessible to everyone, that our mission is clear. Our mission is to make Catholic healthcare accessible to everyone. Let me say that again. The mission of My Catholic Doctor is to make Catholic healthcare accessible to everyone. So we knew that most people don't choose how they pay for their healthcare. And we had, in order for us to meet that mission, we had to be able to accept diverse forms of payment for healthcare. So that meant figuring out this insurance mess, which it is. It's a real mess. Healthcare insurance is a big mess. And figuring out how to accept it for services rendered via telehealth in 50 states. And I should add that we're not telehealth only. Many of our clinicians do provide house calls, and we do have a number of in-person locations that have now opened. So we did that. In 2019, we figured out how to bill insurance, or we started that process, and we built, my husband's company built a whole custom-built telehealth technology platform and donated it to my Catholic doctor. We launched that platform on November 1st, 2019. It went off without a hitch, which was by God's grace alone. And then we were in the right place at the right time for the COVID-19 pandemic.
Wow, that's amazing. One, I want to pause a few points in that story. One, at the beginning, it sounded like you were able to live your faith more freely and more joyfully at the non-Catholic hospital than at the Catholic hospital. Like, I don't want.
Yes, that's been my experience, and it's been repeated. So I did skip a little portion there. Actually, so I was official spokesperson for Washington University Department of Pediatrics and St. Louis Children's Hospital and the American Academy of Pediatrics for 7 years. And in that role, I was able to, I really had every tool at my disposal for public influence. I mean, my blog had more than 1 million readers. I was on all the major national television networks. And I had this sort of glitzy, glamorous mom pediatrician career. And I knew the day was coming when I would be too conservative for that position, but I was able to pull it off a long time. And I was able to pull it off being very bold in my words, that I went right up to the line without really speaking about faith, but I was able to speak with a very pro-life voice and really challenge secular views on healthcare, especially pro-choice views. And at the end of the 7 years doing this, I asked myself, like, have I really answered the call of Jesus Christ to heal the sick and proclaim the kingdom? I had every tool at my disposal to be effective in the media, and I wasn't afraid to be extremely bold in my words, as long as I remained secular, which was the requirement of my employer. And for many years, I really tried to speak the truth in secular words, right? And I thought I could do it. But after 7 years of doing that, did I help? I think I was very effective in helping people raise healthier families. But I don't think I was effective in answering the call of Jesus Christ to heal the sick and proclaim the kingdom. I don't think I proclaimed the kingdom. And that really hung on my heart. And I knew I wanted to speak with the whole voice of my faith. I desperately wanted to. So the day came when I was too conservative for that position. I knew that was coming. I did finally leave Washington University. I went to Mercy Hospital, St. Louis, for a period of time. I've said their names, so I'm going to be careful about what I say. But I think my experience at Mercy Hospital St. Louis mirrors my experience of now interviewing more than 250 clinicians that want to be a part of my Catholic doctor. That across the board, I hear the same story again and again that experiences what I experienced in Catholic healthcare, which is that at best, most Catholic hospitals are not discriminating against Catholic clinicians, that you may be allowed to practice NFP there. You may be allowed to say you oppose abortion there. But there are very, very few institutions that are, really insisting that every one of their clinicians abide by the ethical and religious directives of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. Most of them have it in their bylaws, but it's not enforced. And many Catholic health systems even tell people, clinicians during during the onboarding process and new provider orientation, that they're not enforced. So, Catholic healthcare, it's really, really tragic. So this was the next stage of my discernment, was what happened to Catholic healthcare? Only 250 years ago, we had tens of thousands of religious that took vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience and dedicated their whole lives to Catholic healthcare and building these incredible institutions, the legacy of which still dots our country with all these buildings dotted across the country that have crosses on the outside and beautiful religious art inside and religious names. But Andrew, you and I both know that inside those buildings, there are only a subset of clinicians, a small number of clinicians that are truly trained and experienced in the practice of Catholic healthcare. And that sometimes inside those institutions, those people are even discriminated against. And it's harder to work in a Catholic, in some cases, it is harder for Catholic clinicians to work in Catholic healthcare than it is for them to work in secular healthcare. And so, I went through this process of there's a certain anger about this, and I really had to think about what happened. Like, how did all these institutions so quickly, start offering IVF and contraception? I won't go into it. The service is not consistent with Catholic teaching. And I finally, it was my clear discernment that I wasn't called to try to, get rid of the dirt in these institutions. And I actually offered in the very beginning, I did speak with my former employer, Mercy St. Louis, and about building all of my Catholic doctor through them and collaborating with them. And they just weren't interested. And then I actually contacted two other major Catholic health systems about my idea, and they were not interested. And then the discernment was clear. And a C-level person at one of those institutions said to me, Kathleen, this is beautiful work. Do it independently. Don't do it in collaboration with any major Catholic health system. And so that's what we've done. We've built a network of Catholic clinicians that are called to this mission of making Catholic healthcare accessible. It's authentic Catholic healthcare. And we also worked. It works the other way around. It's not just for the patients, it's for the clinicians, that it's an opportunity for us to practice with the full voice of our faith in a very faithful environment.
Yeah. So two things there. First, just the idea that a Catholic hospital isn't like any other hospital that just happens to have the Catholic label. Like, this is just a regular hospital, and we happen to have Catholic on the sign and a cross on the wall and a chapel somewhere tucked away in the building, right? This can happen with our Catholic schools too, that it's just a school like any other school that happens to have religion class once a week or every day or what have you. But a Catholic hospital or a Catholic school is a part of the church, meaning it expresses the church's worldview. From top to bottom, the way that it operates is living within the values of the church. And I think what we found is these big institutions, we've been kind of lulled into a sense that we're like everyone else, except we just happen to be Catholic. And it's not the case. There's a great book that was written. It's called From Christendom to Apostolic Mission. And I think you might want to, someday on your biography, you can say from influencer to apostle. And that's sort of like the dream for a lot of people, is to become the influencer, like write the books, get on the news stations, be the person people go to get the answers from. But that's, like you said, it does some good, but it's not what we're called to in the gospel. Jesus wasn't an influencer, right? He gets baptized in the Jordan, and you'd think he'd want to keep the momentum going after everyone heard God's voice. But then he goes out in the desert for 40 days and prays. It's very clear Jesus wasn't trying to get a crowd. He was trying to change hearts. So first, like, I love that story. And like going from like having your own home and your own farm to like moving back in with your parents. Like, how many doctors who haven't had their medical license revoked could say that? Right? If the cross doesn't have a high cost, but that's apostolate. It's not about the money, it's not about the lifestyle, it's not about the reputation, it's about having the heart of Christ in the world. And I love that that's the foundation of my Catholic doctor. It reminded me of the quote from St. Teresa of Avila. She's thrown off the horse, and she says, "If this is how you treat your friends, God, no wonder you have so few." And that's the call, and it actually resonates with some of Getting Awakened Catholic started here, because there isn't money in podcasting. People think because you have a microphone in front of your face and headphones on your head that this is somehow making money, but we spend money to make these podcasts. To the expense of the De La Torre family who founded Awakened Catholic, to all the creators, some even traveling into the studio at their own expense. So these apostolates start really as an act of sacrifice, and that's what it has to be about, because the Lord calls us to do His work with a pure heart, and as human people, if there's no sacrifice, we very quickly become corrupted. Our hearts aren't designed to remain free if we're not making that sacrifice. And I think that's to some extent what's happened in these great institutions. As the church has gotten strong and these institutions have flourished, we've lost sight of what the end is, what the goal is, what the purpose is. Right? We're a non-profit, quote unquote, but the way we interpret that is the money has to go into the mission. But if the mission becomes the growth of the institution, then that means we need to increase the bottom line to build the next hospital. Right? We have to make more money in order to get better doctors, and so on and so forth. But there isn't a consideration of, is this institution building the kingdom of God? Right? Is this institution saving souls? And so I love hearing your story. It's resonating with me, and thank you for doing it because it's frankly what the world needs.
Well, all good things come from the Lord, Andrew, and thank you for what you're doing.
Amen. Well, let's talk a little bit more about authentic Catholic healthcare. A lot of people don't realize that the whole hospital system, medical system really grew out of the church. It grew along with the universities out of the monastic system, right? So there were these centers of culture of life. Like I'm reading a really old novel right now, and the daughter of this family gets injured, and the person who came and administered the medicine to the child was the priest. And they were commenting about how, well, the priest in the town over was a little bit better with medicine, so they kind of wish that he would have showed up. And, but there was this connection in the church that a lot of times the doctor in town was also the priest in town, and the priest was also the teacher in town. But the church carried forth these missions into people's day-to-day lives. So would you just talk a little bit more about like what Catholic healthcare really is?
So for 2,000 years, the church has had three primary ministries: sacraments, education, and healthcare. And that's what you just summarized. Originally, they were all centered around the parish and the monastic system. And certainly the educational system and the university system grew out of the monastic system, as did the hospital system, right? Our hospital systems grew out of the monastic system. And it's just tragic to me that really over the past 60 years in the United States, the church has lost track of Catholic healthcare. And there's still parishes and there's still Catholic schools for the most part, but many dioceses don't even have a Catholic hospital anymore. And I even had the director of human resources for a Catholic diocese say to me, "Why do you really need a Catholic doctor anyways?" He said, when my wife was pregnant and having a baby, we wanted a Catholic OB-GYN because we just wanted somebody that wouldn't, encourage her to use birth control. But I mean, other than these few situations, I think most people just want the best doctor. They don't necessarily want a Catholic doctor. That's when I knew that we had an uphill battle trying to collaborate with human resources departments from dioceses, and but it points out the key point that only 60 years ago, there's this picture on Twitter. It's an incredible picture of the Eucharist coming through a Catholic hospital, and all the nurses and the staff kneeling as the Eucharist came through down the hallway, and there's an altar boy in front ringing a bell. And then there's another picture of the nurses at change of shift, and they're kneeling around the table at the nurses station praying together before they give nursing report. And I look at this picture and I'm like, are you kidding me? I can't imagine that. I mean, I work in hospitals, and this is only 60 years ago. So what the heck happened? 60 years later, we have, people that, that figure out the health plans for dioceses saying, why do you need a Catholic doctor anyways? And the answer fundamentally is that you want someone that heals the sick and answers the call of Jesus Christ to heal the sick and proclaim the kingdom. That Catholic healthcare at its root meets people where they are in their suffering and is present to them throughout the course of their illness. That Catholic healthcare uses really strong ethics to find really strong science to find root cause of illness, and then treats that underlying cause. This is just good medicine, right? We used to just call this Catholic medicine. There's a new secular term for it. It's called functional medicine, right? So functional medicine is just that. It's finding root cause of illness and treating root cause rather than just, matching symptoms to a pharmaceutical. And that is what's happening. There's these expert systems now used by a lot of online and telehealth companies where you fill out a survey or you fill out a form, you say, these are my symptoms. The computer suggests a pharmaceutical and a plan and a diagnosis. And the doctor either just approves that, or if they need to, they see the patient via video. But in some cases, they just approve it. So you've got computers matching symptoms to diagnoses and pharmaceuticals, right? This is not Catholic healthcare, right? Catholic healthcare is at the root. Doctors are called to seek truth through the study of the natural world and medical sciences and bring the beauty of that healing truth to their patients, and to heal the patient using the mind, body, and spirit, using spiritual approaches when needed, referring for the sacraments when needed, and certainly treating the mental health of a patient as well as the physical health. So it's and using the best science and the best interpersonal relationship possible. So, some people think Catholic healthcare is just about those push button issues like abortion, contraception, euthanasia, right? And these are very, very important issues. I don't want to undermine them. And certainly we all practice in accordance with Catholic teaching on these issues at My Catholic Doctor. But actually, I think the most common ethical issue encountered by the Catholic physician is not abortion, contraception, or euthanasia. It's whether or not to listen to your patient's suffering and be present in their suffering. So, when I had a job where I was working in an ER, and I was paid a base rate and then a certain amount per patient I saw. And then if you saw over a certain number of patients, the rate per patient would go up. So you were really pushed to see as many patients as possible. And I had a colleague that was really, really fast. Oh my gosh, he was in and out of those patient rooms so fast. And he would get this $10,000 bonus like every quarter or whenever it was. And I didn't. Why? Because my volume was lower. Why? Because I was listening to those parents. I mean, they all come to the ER and want to be listened to. They want their suffering to be listened to. And if you choose to do so, you make less money. And that was actually the most common ethical dilemma I found myself facing is whether to listen to patients' suffering and be present in their suffering or make more money. And at My Catholic Doctor, we address this by using, for one, we use something called time-based billing. So that allows us to bill for time spent with patient, not just the complexity of the patient. And the other thing that we've done is we've used the savings from telehealth and we put that back into the doctor-patient relationship. So, with telehealth, your overhead is drastically reduced from an in-person facility. And if you look at the for-profit telehealth companies in the United States, like the big ones like Doctor on Demand, MD Live, Teladoc, what they're doing is they're taking all of that savings and they're for-profit companies. They're taking the extra money made and they're giving it to their shareholders. But at My Catholic Doctor, we are a 501c3 not-for-profit, and we're able to take the reduced overhead cost and instead pay our doctors for the time spent with patients, which is why we're able to use time-based billing. You make more money if you use complexity-based billing, but we use primarily use time-based billing, and we pay our doctors, about 3 times what the other major telehealth companies do per patient. So this, and what are we not doing? We're not giving profits to shareholders, right? Instead, we're putting that money back into the doctor-patient relationship so that clinician can truly be present to that patient, truly listen to them, be present in their suffering, but also really listen to their symptoms, get a full history, and seek and order appropriate labs and seek root cause of disease so that you can then treat the root cause of illness.
Yeah, this is huge. So one, the foundation of really Catholic social teaching is the dignity of the human person and the right to life. So like the way you're approaching it, of encountering the person, that's what Jesus did, right? He didn't come to get a crowd. He came to change hearts. So he found 12 guys and they lived life together for 3 years. And that's how he started the church. And through that process of living together, he reformed their hearts. They formed new attachments. They were healed of trauma. He loved the men into being the apostles, right? And that's how it worked. So that's what you're doing. I mean, part of the therapy is the love, frankly, and there's a ton of experiments I think that play this out in various ways that we could dig into, but that's so essential, that piece. It's also bold because people that aren't on the inside of the medical industry. So the way it works is the doctor, based on your constellation of symptoms, assigns you a diagnosis, and there's a code that goes with that the insurance company uses. But with each one of those codes, there's something called a standard of care, meaning based on what studies there are and kind of the generally accepted way of approaching things, there's sort of a way you're supposed to do it. And it's got a bit of a pack mentality, and that provides the doctor with the security, right? If they're in the standard of care, they're more protected from getting sued. Their liability insurance is more likely to cover them. So it really kind of incentivizes the doctor to kind of find the simple solution, to give the pharmaceutical, to not dig deeper, to not encourage you to solve your problem, because that more functional approach, that approach that requires you to change your lifestyle, is more likely not to succeed because it requires the patient to reliably do whatever they have to do to get healthy. So the system incentivizes the doctor to basically control the situation by applying the pharmaceutical, as opposed to being vulnerable to the patient being faithful to the prescription, right? So what you're doing is you're encountering the people, but there's also then a mutual vulnerability, right? And that's another essential piece of any love relationship. So just digging into all that, I love it.
Well, what a beautiful summary, Andrew. Very few people really recognize this key role of Catholic healthcare as relationship and seeking truth through the sciences. One of our challenges in our current situation is really finding that solid science, right? Because good medicine is good science is good medicine. We can't have good medicine without good science. And good ethics is good science, right? We can't have good ethics without good science. And part of what we're really challenged by in our current political environment is the politicization of a lot of our scientific research. And that's part of it's been part of the experience that my Catholic doctor has gone through since we were founded. We opened pre-COVID. And it's been a joy to watch the robust, respectful, academic, and scientific conversation amongst our clinicians on how to treat COVID-19. And there's been diversity of opinion, and plenty of respectful disagreement. But what I can say is that, first of all, they've all been nothing but respectful and kind and engaging, but also seeking truth through science and really looking hard at the studies and making decisions about what studies were appropriately designed and what data can and should be used and what data can and should not be used. This is really hard work, and you're generally not paid anymore if you've done it or if you haven't. And it takes a faithful heart to do it.
Yeah, typically doctors just get the bulletin from their state health department and then just do whatever it says. Like that's a lot of the research that goes into what you're getting at your primary care physician largely. So you have to look into how the study is designed, but before that even is who paid for the study, right? Then what are the conflicts of interest of the researchers who are carrying it out? What their hypothesis is, because sometimes they don't even state what the hypothesis is, and then have they actually interpreted the data accurately, right? Because the temptation is there's so many studies, like more than anyone could ever read. So a lot of people just read the abstract, right at the top. So this is like really hard work to really dig into it and get a sense. I mean, you could probably hire a team of researchers, and they would still struggle to just bring conclusive answers. Sometimes concierge doctors actually do that. They'll have a research cohort as part of their practice. That's really great. So I'm curious, you had mentioned at one time how many practitioners you have in the practice, right? Obviously your healthcare is as good as the doctor who's seeing you. What's your process? Like, how do you guarantee that somebody who's just sort of Catholic doesn't sneak in?
Sure. Well, first of all, they're somewhat self-selecting because of the name of our organization. So you have to be willing to put your name and face on a website called My Catholic Doctor, which is in and of itself dangerous. When I first founded this organization, one of my colleagues at WashU said to me, Kathleen, you're committing professional suicide. And so to put your name and face on our website is not trivial. That's the first point. Secondly, they do all sign a contract that has a 7-day termination clause if you do not follow the teachings of the Catholic Church as defined by 3 sets of documents, which are the ethical and religious directives of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, the ethical policy statements of the Catholic Medical Association, and the Catechism of the Catholic Church. So if anybody hears that you're not practicing in accordance with these documents, we will terminate. So it's not it's not just there and it's not enforced, as does occur in some Catholic institutions. We make it very clear to everyone at the time of hire that we will enforce these rules, and there's a 7-day termination clause on that. They all also go through an interview process. They all also go through an interview process when they're hired, where they have to verbally commit to not only the Catholic teaching part is in a signed contract, but they have to also verbally commit to praying for the work and to seeking personal holiness. Because if we're not all praying for the work every day and trying to grow in personal holiness, we're really no different than any other healthcare institution.
I love that. It's not just the patient-doctor emphasis, but it's also the doctor-doctor emphasis, right? On some level, them all, right? And probably at any given hospital in the country, the doctors probably actually don't all know each other, at least in that depth, maybe. So what's kind of the breadth of services? Like, I know part of it is kind of different states, and there's different licensing and different insurance billing. So I know some services might be limited to the states the doctors are licensed in, but then other services are probably available everywhere. But depending on how many practitioners you have, you could kind of offer everything everywhere too.
So we're a rapidly growing organization with currently more than 100 clinicians offering some service in all of the 50 states, as well as some services in Canada, Mexico, the UK, and the Caribbean. We offer a full service medical practice with all virtual primary care and urgent care services. But the most common reason why people come to us is because they're seeking a specifically Catholic service, especially fertility and women's health care, natural family planning, restorative reproductive medicine. Also, men's health and fertility is a huge issue, as well as weight management and trying to seek a method of behavior change and behavior modification that really incorporates Catholic spirituality. We also provide a lot of mental health services, and we have a beautiful new program for dementia, people living with dementia, that's in collaboration with the Carmelite Sisters of the Aged and Infirm. We work with Sister Anne Francis Klein of the Nashville Dominicans, or the Dominican Sisters of St. Cecilia, with our college program and natural family planning. We've collaborated with the Catholic Couples NFP, or CCNFP, for a no-cost natural family planning program, no cost to the patient. We have collaborated with the Religious Sisters of Mercy of Alma. Sister Marisha Weber is the chair of our board. And we've collaborated with the Little Workers of the Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary in a couple of ways. And we provide telehealth to one of their schools. And in fact, we have a whole school telehealth program bringing Catholic healthcare to Catholic schools. And we do a few other things too.
That's huge. I mean, so I work for the church, for our local diocese, and one of the most common calls we get is, well, probably the two most common. One, looking for mental health care, looking for counselors who are Catholic, psychologists, psychiatrists who are Catholic. Two is that fertility piece, like a NAPRO doctor. What do we do for infertility? What do we do if we know we shouldn't have another child, but we want to practice NFP? You know, all these questions are huge. But to get to the nearest NAPRO doctor, a lot of times people have to drive hours to get to their practice. So just the fact that all of those services are available virtually all over the country, I mean, that's a massive thing.
And we have a few in-person locations. We recognize that telehealth will never 100% replace in-person healthcare. However, our success stories are remarkable. You know, we have a patient, an infertility patient in Hawaii, who had seen more than 10 infertility specialists, most out-of-pocket costs that they didn't have enough money to afford. And she saw one of our clinicians that physician is based in California. This patient never saw the California doctor in person. It was all telehealth. She had a local OB-GYN in Hawaii who had examined her, and she was able to, send those records to her My Catholic Doctor physician. There's no need to repeat a pelvic exam when it's already been done by a board-certified OB-GYN. This NAPRO doctor in California was able to order the extensive laboratory testing she needed. She was able to get all those labs drawn locally in Hawaii. And in 3 months' time, she was pregnant. And she's now at about 20 weeks. So, telehealth can be very, very successful. Even, who would have thought that infertility care could be so successfully done via telehealth? But it is.
Yeah, I mean, well, the world was forced into telehealth for a while, so if people haven't got on board, then you never know when it's going to happen again. I think telehealth is definitely the way of the future on a few different levels. One, like I said, there aren't the services everywhere, and much less Catholic services everywhere. So the access is huge. And then second, like you said, a lot can be done in collaboration between local doctors and then the telehealth doctor. A lot of times it's the consultation that's needed. It's understanding things from the ethical perspective, knowing what other options are out there that their doctor hasn't offered to them or made them aware of. Like all of these things are super essential.
Yeah.
So one thing I wanted to touch on was part of Catholic social teaching that's huge is just the option for the poor. The easiest way to do client services is to charge a lot of money. That's the easiest way to do it, because let's say I do coaching and spiritual direction. If I charge $50 for a session, let's say, at that point, maybe half of it is actually money that ends up in my pocket. The rest goes into all the overhead, the cost of the website, the services, the insurance, et cetera, et cetera. If I charge $100, then I haven't just doubled my price, I've tripled my profit.
Right.
So then if I charge $200, I've now 7 times my profit, from $25 for the session to $175 for the session. And this is easy to do because you're using the same amount of time, but you need like 20% of the clients in order to turn the profit. So you set yourself up where you're working like 10 hours a week, and then you're just sipping pina colada the rest of the week or doing whatever you want to do. But what it does is it makes the care you offer it makes the services you offer inaccessible to people. So just hearing that you've done the hard work of starting to navigate the insurance landscape, and I'm sure it's probably an endless struggle that you have to deal with. That's so big, because that gives access to such a large percentage of the population to the services you're providing. Would you just talk more about that process of like making healthcare accessible, and then?
Yeah, I spent so much time discerning this when we started this organization, and there's no end of people that advised us to go with some sort of a concierge model, or anyway, a direct pay model, or a direct primary care model, anything that cut out the insurance billing industry. And in fact, if you look at secular healthcare startups right now in the United States, there's all these different ideas and models and really cool stuff out there. But there's one thing they all have in common, which is they cut out the insurance billing industry. Why? Because it is a stinking pile of poop. I can't begin to tell you how hard it is to navigate this system, how much money it costs to navigate this system. And what do you get for all of this is you get paid a lot less if you're in network with an insurance company. And for my Catholic doctor, it's been truly the thorn in our side to deal with the insurance billing industry on a daily basis. And we're still working on it every single day. But for that to make Catholic healthcare accessible to everyone, we had to accept diverse methods of payment, recognizing that many people do not choose how they pay for their healthcare. So if you choose a direct primary care model or a self-pay model, these are very important models, and there's wonderful people offering fabulous services through these models. I'm not gonna put them down. I think there's a place for each of these models, but there's this significant portion of people that really can't afford healthcare outside of their employer-provided health plan, or their health plan that they're scraping by paying for each month. And if you're not part of that plan, they can't afford it. And so this really impedes access to Catholic healthcare. So we knew from the beginning we had to be able to accept insurance. So we accept diverse forms of payment. We have very low self-pay rates. We can direct contract with Catholic employers. We accept as many forms of insurance as we possibly can. It's a process. Right now, we do not have Medicaid in every state, but we're working on it. We do accept Medicare nationwide, and we accept all major national insurance companies, and we are slowly getting the smaller regional carriers.
Yeah, that's huge. So we're kind of winding down on time. So I want to just open it up. Is there anything else that you would want to tell the audience before we jump off?
I want to thank each and every one of them for their faithfulness, and remember that God keeps his promises, right? His promise for salvation of those who love him. And I think as you struggle with your own illnesses, and physical and mental illness is a primary form of suffering that the Lord has allowed for all of antiquity, right? And no one is spared their cross in physical illness and suffering, right? And when you're there, to remember that the Lord keeps his promises to those who love him, and that those and that Jesus Christ heals, right? And sometimes he heals as a miracle, but most of the time the Lord expects us as clinicians and as patients to use what St. Ignatius of Loyola called, quote, the intellectual gifts with which God has bestowed us, end quote. We're supposed to use our brain, our intellect, the medical sciences. And even Padre Pio, all these people that were healed seeing him, but he built a hospital for all the people that weren't healed. And so the answer to that physical suffering that the Lord's allowed is mind, body, and spirit, right? It's sacraments, education, and healthcare. And when you're in that place, use those three gifts of the church, the sacraments, the education, and the Catholic healthcare. And remember that the Lord keeps his promises to those who love him.
Well, you heard it here, folks. If you haven't checked it out yet, go over to mycatholicdoctor.com. If you're looking for a primary care physician, you need help with fertility care, mental health care, learning NFP, counseling, weight loss, across the gambit. So if you're looking for a Catholic doctor, want a second opinion, you maybe are having some children. That's kind of where my wife and I are in life. Head over to My Catholic Doctor, check out their practitioners, sign up, and I'm sure you won't be disappointed. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on Physically Spiritual. Thank you so much for being a part of Physically Spiritual. Every moment of the show you've watched, know that I'm grateful that you've given your time to this. I'm so passionate about the message that I'm trying to share, and I'm excited about the future of the show. So thank you for every like, every view, every watch, every follow, every comment, every rating you give in the show. And a special thank you to all you that are already members of the Awakened Nation. So thanks again for supporting the show.